This episode is brought to you by Tylenol, Band-Aids, and ice. Well, not really. I'm not getting any sponsorship dollars here, but when I recap how the games went and the injury list, those could be good sponsors. As it's time for another episode of Hi there, it's Brett Hornby here. Welcome to the latest episode of my Calgary Stampeders this month. We're in episode 3 of season 2 here, as we'll recap how July 2019 went for the Calgary Stampeders here. And as I said in the opening there, I'm sure a lot of Tylenol, Band-Aids, and ice has been consumed with my Calgary Stampeders here, as once I recap all the games here and the stats and where we are in the standings here, injuries has definitely been a big storyline here, but we are still going up with the next man up philosophy here, as last season it was wide receivers. This season, it's been all over the roster, and as we entered July here, so if you go back to episode 2 when I covered June there, we were coming off of that crazy win against the BC Lions there, when it was actually Nick Arbuckle that took over for Bo Levi Mitchell late in the game there, and he rallied the team to the comeback win there. Actually, as it turned out, Bo Levi Mitchell actually had a sore shoulder and was put on the 6-game injured list here. So this whole month we were rallying behind Nick Arbuckle here, and Nick Arbuckle and pretty much 2/3 of the league literally has actually been doing without their starting quarterback here. So injuries has definitely been hitting us hard with our star players and league-wide here. But, if you tell me where my team would be right now with all the injuries, turnover on defense, and Bo would be out for a whole month, I'd take it here. But I think strength of the schedule is going to be a big factor here once we get into the next months here. So I'll bring up my notes here and let's recap how July 2019 went for the Calgary Stampeders here. As we were entering July with a 1-1 record there, we lost the home opener there against the Ottawa RedBlacks by 4. And we beat the BC Lions by 4 with that crazy comeback win, but we had a bye in between there. So before any games took place in July here, the Calgary Stampeders made a trade with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers here to bring in another defensive end here, as we required Patrick Choudja. It's Choudja. That's how it's pronounced, for negotiating rates, so we don't know the negotiating rates here. So Winnipeg has picked up some negotiating rates from a player to be named later. And he was going to be wearing number 99 for us. And as I said, key injuries to running back John Jackson and Bo Levi Mitchell. Both were put on the 6-game injury list. And then another guy that was entering the first season with the Calgary Stampeders, or third in the CFL Generals, Evan McLennan, is out for the season here. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, as the cliche goes, for injuries on the Calgary Stampeders here. So anyway, the first game that the Calgary Stampeders played in July here was on Saturday, July the 6th. Week 4 action, first one on the road here, and first professional start for Nick Arbuckle in all places in Mosaic Stadium in Saskatchewan there, where Ryderville and the passionate fan base makes it very hostile for the opposition team here. But I'm going to say Calgary, things went well for the Calgary Stampeders, and I say this was the best overall effort for the Calgary Stampeders this month here. It was an 8 p.m. kickoff at Mosaic Stadium here, and I'm going to say Calgary scored on the open drive as we took the ball first there and marched it down the field, and Calgary scored a touchdown there and took a 6-0 lead out of the first quarter. Didn't failed on the 2-point conversion there, but it was a nice start for the Calgary Stampeders, led by Nick Arbuckle, our backup quarterback here. So as I say here, 6-0 for Calgary after the first quarter here. Second quarter had 4 field goals in total here in the game here. Calgary had 3 by Rene Paredes, our steady kicker, who's been here since 2011, and 1 by former Brett Lowther, is injured right now for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. So they picked up Gabriel Ferraro, who we actually drafted there and was here in camp, but then got released there. So he is now the field goal kicker for the Saskatchewan Roughriders there. So after adding up 3 field goals for Calgary and 1 for Saskatchewan here, Calgary was up 15-3 at halftime here. Calgary offense and defense was firing in all cylinders here. As going back to the theme about starting quarterbacks being injured here, well, Zach Claros, he pretty much was hurt in the first quarter of the first game of the season here. So Saskatchewan was going with Cody Fajardo, who was bouncing around the Toronto Argonauts and the BC Lions there. And he actually was coming off a week before there where he had a 400-yard game here. So we'll see how he does here. But I'm going to say he definitely had a rough game with our defense here. So actually after having a 15-3 lead for the Calgary Stampeders, the third quarter actually started off pretty good for the Saskatchewan Roughriders there as they received the ball first. And Luches Purefoy had the nice return there to give Saskatchewan a favorable field position to start the third quarter in the second half there. And eventually they scored their first touchdown of the game there to make it a 15-10 game. So it was 15-10 for Calgary for much of the third quarter. It was a defensive struggle in between there as both teams had Calgary was making their first start with Nick Arbuckle, and Cody Fajardo was struggling there, but our defense also stood up too. But Calgary started slowly putting things away here as the last drive of the third quarter, Calgary marched down the field with Eric Rogers eventually scoring a touchdown there. So Calgary had a 22-10 lead after the third quarter there, and things were looking good for Calgary here. And on the next drive here, Trey Overson, one of our defensive backs here, who actually had 3 interceptions there in the first game there, and he actually, in the BC game there, he looked like he had a pick 6 that he returned that got overruled by a roughing the passer challenge. Well, in this game, he actually got a pick 6 here off of Cody Fajardo early in the fourth quarter there, and then with a 2-point conversion there, Calgary now took a 30-10 lead here early in the fourth quarter after a 2-point conversion by Eric Rogers here, and Calgary pretty much put this away here as later in the fourth quarter, Nick Arbuckle found actually one of our top receivers who's really been strong in the first third of the season here, Reggie Pingleton, connected on a 76-yard play there to make it a 37-10 game there. And ultimately, that's how things ended here, as the Calgary Stampeders won their first game on the road in the 2019 season by beating the Saskatchewan Roughriders 37-10 here. And I think how Calgary looked overall there, they looked like the well-oiled machine that that Calgary's been known for the last couple of years. That's won us the Grey Cup, or at least got us the big show there. As the offense, was clicking, our defense made some big plays, got some pressures there, and finally, as when I go over some individual stats here, Calgary was able to get the running game going here. So, like I say, a convincing win here. So if you look at the individual stats here for the Calgary Stampeders, and I also highlight players for the Saskatchewan Roughriders too. Nick Arbuckle, couldn't have a more perfect game for his first career start in a hostile environment here. He was 19 for 22 for passing there. He had 262 yards and 2 touchdowns there. So put us at ease a little that I still say Bo Levi Mitchell gives us our best chance of winning here. But that's a nice game for Nick Arbuckle here. And then mentioning that John Jackson was hurt running back here. Well, the other guy that got elevated from the practice roster here is Kadeem Carey here. He made his first start, and he had 63 yards on 13 carries and 1 touchdown here. And then Terry Williams also had 5 carries for 59 yards on the ground there. So we finally had a good game earning-wise. And then Reggie Pingleton was the leading receiver He had 4 catches for 102 yards, including that 76-yarder for the touchdown there. So that's who stood out here for the Stampeders in the offensive side of the ball here. The defensive side of the ball here, well, the whole defense had 5 sacks in total, including 2 by Chris Kasher here. So another guy that was on the practice roster last year, making a name for himself. Trey Overson, he actually had 2 interceptions, including that 1 pick six. So in the first 3 games, he had 5 interceptions there. Something quarterbacks are going to have to take notice here in our secondary there. As well, Robertson Daniel, who was wearing number 0, also had an interception for the Calgary Stampeders. And then Kroy Greenwood, a guy that we picked up late last year to be one of the little linebackers there. He's almost taking over for Alex Singleton here. I mean, no one can replace him, but he led the way with 8 tackles there. So Kroy Greenwood's been definitely a nice pickup here. And I said this definitely was a breakthrough game for our defense that with all the turnover, lost some guys over the NFL and free agency. I also lost the master and Devon Claybrooks to the head coach of the BC Lions there. I mean, kudos to Josh Bell, who still coaches our secondary there, and Brent Monson, who got promoted to be the defensive coordinator. And we picked up J.C. Sherritt, the long-time middle linebacker who played for the Edmonton Eskimos, now is the coach for the Calgary Stampeders there. So it's definitely kudos to them, especially in this game here. And so in our defense has slowly come together. So on the Saskatchewan side of the ball here, well, Cody Fajardo definitely had a rough game as quarterback here. He was 9 for 15. He only threw for 89 yards and 2 interceptions here. To the point that Isaac Harker came in as quarterback too for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. He had a better percentage at 9 for 13, but he only threw for 72 yards and 1 interception there. William Powell, one of the big signings that the Saskatchewan Roughriders made in the offseason for their running game. He had 14 carries for 50 yards, an okay game. And their rating receivers, they still got Naaman Roosevelt. He had 5 catches for 66 yards here. Now if you look on the defensive side of the ball here, well, A.C. Leonard had 2 sacks, and former Stampeder Charleston Hughes had 1 sack, Charleston Hughes. And then Michael Johnson, first time he's facing the Calgary Stampeders since losing him to free agency. He had 3 tackles there, so that was the Calgary Stampeders in Saskatchewan there. Things were looking good under Nick Arbuckle here. But the next week here would be the first big test for the Calgary Stampeders. Saturday, July the 13th is Week 5 action here. We were taking on the Hamilton Tiger Cats, still on the road, as when the Calgary Stampede is here. The Calgary Stampeders usually go on the road here, so a 5 p.m. kickoff. Tim Hortons Field here, and it was a first good test for the Calgary Stampeders. See how we play against stronger competition here. Coming in this game, the Calgary Stampeders have won 15 straight games. That's including the 102nd Grey Cup thriller there, where we won a close one there and maybe benefited on a legal block here. So the last time that the Calgary Stampeders lost to the Hamilton Tiger Cats was back in 2011 when that game was actually played in Moncton for the touchdown Atlantic here. So we'll see how could the streak continue for the winning ways, or could Hamilton break the streak here. One thing I should note here is that it was a windy day in Hamilton, so definitely wreaked havoc for kickers there. And in the first quarter there, only 1 stinking point was scored there. And it was a missed field goal in the first quarter for Calgary. So Calgary had a 1-0 lead here. Another thing I can highlight that what happened in the first quarter here is that Calgary faked the punt to keep a drive going. So Rob Maver made 1 nice pass. Who knows, maybe our punter could fill in for quarterback if for really in a pinch there. And actually in this game, when I learned on watching it on TSN that, believe it or not, Trey Robertson, or secondary, he actually played quarterback in college there, and I guess that's one of the things he's benefited on in the defensive side of the ball, is singing like a quarterback here. There's some tidbit for you there. So it was 1-0 for Calgary after the first quarter there. Executed a beautiful fake punt there, but then I'm going to say, after when Hamilton missed a field goal early in the second quarter there, Calgary scored their first touchdown on the next drive here, as Nick Arbuckle has definitely found some chemistry with Reggie Pingleton there. So Calgary had a 7-0 lead as they failed on the 2-point conversion there. And on the next drive, when Hamilton was still deep in Calgary territory here, Kadeem Carey made a big specialties play there as he blocked the punt and recovered the fumble and scored a touchdown there. So Calgary took a 14-0 lead after the point after there, and things were looking good for the Calgary Stampeders early in the second quarter there to continue the winning streak against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. However, things started changing on the next play there. It was on the ensuing kickoff after when it looked like Calgary was going to take momentum here. Well, likely the third returned the kickoff for a touchdown here, and then they also were successful on the 2-point conversion there, so the lead got cut down to 14-8, so the Hamilton faithful got back into the game with that electrifying play there. And then after Calgary picked up a safety there as they forced Hamilton to concede a safety there deep in their own end zone there for field position, Calgary took a 16-8 lead there. And then fairly late in the second quarter there, Calgary was attempting a 51-yard field goal here. However, it was just wide here, and one of the best returners in the CFL, Brendan Banks, received the missed field goal, and he returned it back to the house here for 115 yards. So Brendan Banks returned the missed field goal for a touchdown here, and then after a successful 2-point conversion by the Hamilton Tiger Cats, we had a 16-16 tie going into halftime here. So Hamilton was able to pick up some precious points here on special teams here. So going into the second half here, there actually was no scoring at all in the third quarter there. It was still a 16-16 game there going into the fourth quarter here. However, it looked like Hamilton was the better team there because they were doing a better job of moving the ball there, and Calgary was a little sloppy there as there were a couple of drop balls. I know Eric Rogers had a rough game, and there were definitely a few fumbles there. So going into the fourth quarter here, it was the Brendan Banks show here as Hamilton scored the first touchdown of the fourth quarter here as Brendan Banks scored his first of the game, but as a receiver here. So Hamilton took a 23-16 lead here. However, Calgary did answer back as they marched down the field, and Kadeem Carey scored a short running play to tie the game up at 23-all there. However, Hamilton eventually did score the go-ahead touchdown with just under 3 minutes to go here on another Brendan Banks receiving here, and Hamilton took a 30-23 lead here. Calgary was looking to answer back here. However, as they were marching the ball out of their own end there, Marky Thanville unfortunately fumbled the ball there, so Hamilton did recover, and they took some time off the clock there, and after being stopped there and a couple penalties pushed them back there, Hamilton was able to punt the ball here, and Calgary, well, deep in their own territory there, had a very slim chance, but maybe an opportunity to, do something interesting here, hope for either pass interference call here. However, Calgary wasn't only able to get to about midfield, so Calgary ran out of time to pull out a miracle here and lost this game 30-23 here. So ultimately, the Hamilton Tiger Cats snapped the futility streak against the Calgary Stampeders, and I pinned this on the fact that Calgary lost this game because of special teams in the second quarter there, and didn't make plays there, especially in the second half there, where we took a few penalties and weren't connecting on any passes there. However, we still had a couple, individual good performances here on both sides of the ball here. Nick Arbuckle, he was 24 for 40 there, but his passing percentage would have been a little better if a couple of receivers connected here. He actually threw for 368 yards here. And then I'll just throw in there that Rob Maber, he threw that one pass for 19 yards on the fake punt there. So Rob Maber now is listed one of the passers for the Calgary Stampeders for the season there. However, we were not able to get the rushing game going, as Calgary as a team only had 27 yards rushing, so that wasn't good. And Reggie Pingleton led the way in receiving with 8 catches for 118 yards there, so Reggie Pingleton is definitely he had a couple of 100-yard games last year, and he's definitely picking up being one of the go-to receivers for Calgary. And on the defensive side of the ball here, Cordero Law actually led the way. He had 5 tackles and 3 sacks there. And then Deshaun Amos, one of the rookies in the linebacker of the secondary there, he had an interception. And then I got how Kadeem Carey had the touchdown on the block punt there. So, it's definitely nice to see we have more players other than Trey Overson to pick off interceptions here, which definitely will get in the, hopefully maybe they head in the opposition quarterbacks here. So if you look on the Hamilton side of the ball here, you would think, well, how the heck, well, it was special teams, because Jeremiah Masoli, he was 25-34, but a lot of the plays were short passing plays because he only had 192 yards. He had 2 touchdowns and an interception here. And then Malik Irons, the running back, was leading the way for Hamilton. He had an okay game at 14 carries at 61 yards here. However, Brandon Banks, definitely wish I had him on fantasy that week here. Just in receiving, he had 9 catches for 86 yards. 2 touchdowns here. And if you go on the defensive side of the ball here, a couple former Stampeders that we lost in free agency stood out here. Tunde Didelke, he actually led the way with 8 tackles here. Jagger Davis, he had 3 tackles and a sack there. And then got to highlight Will Likely III, had that 1 kickoff return for a touchdown. And then Brandon Banks, he had 3 touchdowns in this game, 2 receiving, and then that 1 touchdown on a missed field goal return here. So Calgary split the Calgary Stampede road trip with a win in Saskatchewan and a loss in Hamilton here. So in a short week here, the next game for the Calgary Stampeders here was on Thursday, July 18th, week 6. We were taking on the Toronto Argonauts at home, a Thursday night football game, 7 p.m. kickoff at McMahon Stadium here. And at the time here, the Toronto Argonauts were winless here, and we can also highlight that the Northern Bikes, which I captured that video, was the halftime show here. And I'm going to say it was definitely a sloppy game, especially on both sides here. I mean, eventually Toronto committed more turnovers than Calgary. Toronto committed 6 turnovers in total in this game. And then it was a cool rainy day as, the rain came in the second quarter there. And of all the years that I've gone to games at McMahon here, I'm going to say for July here, this game actually felt more like a late September or October game. I've been to games in October. I mean, I sit on the east side of the stadium too, which is the sunny side of the stadium. I've been to some games in October. I've actually had to wear shorts and t-shirt because it was pretty warm, especially being in the stadium here, but not this game here. So all other logistics aside here, let's actually talk about the game here. And Toronto actually did score first in this game as former draft pick by the Calgary Stampeders, Trey Overson, who recently was picked up by the Toronto Argonauts here. He actually scored a 50-yarder to give Toronto a 3-0 lead there. However, late in the first quarter there, well, Jerron Breskison actually, he also got hurt in that game against the BC Lions, made his return to the lineup here, and he definitely made an impact there for a 20-yard play to give Calgary a 7-3 lead after the first quarter there. And I said, Jerron Breskison and Brandon Smith, after missing a couple games, actually got back in the lineup here, and they both made an impact here. Calgary in the second quarter there, early in the second quarter there, kicked the 31-yard there field goal there, so it was 10-3 Calgary early in the second quarter there, and then Calgary was able to get a single on a long punt there, but not in that case we didn't mean to do that, but it was 11-3 there. And then I'm going to say Toronto had their best drive of the game there, late in the second quarter there, as Toronto, who also has been dealing without their first string quarterback, James Franklin there, so McLeod Bethel Thompson, who I actually like how McLeod Bethel Thompson plays. He does have a scrambling ability there, but unfortunately I think he throws too many interceptions, as you'll find out in this game here. But in this drive, he looked pretty good there, he did the 2-minute drill there and drove the Toronto Argonauts down the field and scored a touchdown there, but failed on the 2-point conversion there. So it was 11-9 for the Calgary Stampeders at halftime here, and I did feel this game coming in was a trap game here, just because we were facing a team that has not won yet, and have a tendency to maybe look ahead here, especially when you have stronger teams coming up and all the injuries here. But Toronto definitely looked pretty good, all things considered there. But I mean, it was a sloppy, not pretty game here. But after the halftime show, but Northern Pikes here, the Calgary Stampeders did score early in the defensive play here. Trey Overson, he actually did not pick off an interception here. In fact, he recovered a fumble and returned it 93 yards. As Trey Robertson also made an impact here and returned it with a 93-yard fumble recovery. And then Reggie Pingleton also connected on a 2-point conversion there. So it was a 19-9 for the Calgary Stampeders early in the third quarter there. And halfway through the third quarter, Jerron Brescison strikes again with another play there. And then this time we only made an extra point. So the Calgary Stampeders made it 26-9 there in third quarter there. And then late in the third quarter there, the running back for the Toronto Argonauts, James Wilder Jr., scored a touchdown to cut the lead down to 26-16. And that's where we stood after 3 quarters there. And in fact, actually, no scoring happened at all in the fourth quarter there, as it was just, there were a lot of turnovers here. And fourth quarter felt like a defensive struggle there, and Calgary definitely allowed a lot of yards there, but definitely didn't break. And the offense definitely struggled there, I felt, in the fourth quarter there. So, but hey, it's a win. We won 26-16 here. Kept the Toronto Argonauts winless here. So if you highlight some numbers here, Nick Arbuckle, he was 20 for 30 in this game. Threw for 191 yards, had 2 touchdowns. However, he had 2 interceptions here. Kadeem Carey, I mean, the running game was on and off here, but a lot of these yards that Kadeem Carey picked up was late here, but he had 65 yards on 12 carries there. And then leading receiver, well, it was obviously Jerron Brescison. He had 5 catches for 64 yards and 2 touchdowns there. And then if you look on the defensive side of the ball here, well, Wyndham McManus led the way with 9 tackles here. And let's follow along here on interceptions that were made here. Robertson Daniel, Kroy Greenwood, Brandon Smith, also back from the lineup here, and Raheem Wilson, the rookie here, all each had an interception there. And then Toronto had 2 fumbles there that was recovered there. So I'm going to still say our defense, despite allowing almost 400 yards here, still had a pretty good game, made the plays that mattered the most here. So now if you look on the Toronto Argonauts side of the ball here, well, quarterback McCall Bethel Thompson here, I mean, he was 32 for 42. He did put up 343 yards there, scored 2 touchdowns there. However, he threw for 4 interceptions here. And then James Wilder Jr., he also had a great game here, because on the ground, he had 11 carries for 44 yards here. And then it's still almost baffling that the Toronto Argonauts are winless here, because they still got some big names here, and they were able to spread the ball around, because Amani Edwards, where he had 5 catches for 77 yards and a touchdown here. S.J. Green, he's still producing. He has 6 catches for 72 yards. Darrell Walker, the guy who used to play up in Edmonton, was one of the big off-season signs for the Argonauts here. He had 7 catches for 71 yards here. And then James Wilder Jr. also had 7 catches for 7 yards and a touchdown there. So at least there's some fantasy there for players and receiving there that you can always pick up if you do the TSN CFL fantasy there. And then on the defensive side of the ball here, Abdul Kane had 6 tackles there, and then a couple of players I'll highlight is Mike Awi. I like how he plays, but he tends to play 30 sometimes. He had 5 tackles and an interception there, which is pretty impressive when you have a middle linebacker picks up an interception there. And then Alden Darby, he had 2 tackles and an interception there. So, I mean, all wins count the same here. And if you're a big fan of not pretty wins here, I think you'll like this game too, as the last game that the Calgary Stampeders played in July here was Thursday, July the 25th, Week 7. The Calgary Stampeders were in Ottawa at TD Place Stadium, and it was a 5 p.m. Mountain kickoff here as we were taking on the Ottawa RedBlacks here. Here we are seeking revenge from the opener loss here. After Ottawa looked strong in the first 2 games, and They won the first two. They have lost the last three here, so Ottawa was looking to get back on their winning ways here. And how I can highlight this game is that I felt our offense was able to put up the yards, but unfortunately they couldn't finish off drives and we took too many penalties here. And maybe we might have benefited from a safety decision that was made late in the game there, but it was a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation here. So anyway, before we get there, excuse me here, Calgary looked a little sloppy in the first quarter because they had a couple fumbles here. Both teams had 2 field goals each here, as Lewis Ward scored the first field goal for the Ottawa RedBlacks with a 38-yard field goal there. And then Rene Perry scored the next 2, 47 to 23 yards. Excuse me, and then Lewis Ward had a short 13-yarder there. So it was 6-6 after the first quarter there. And then another player to highlight here for the Ottawa RedBlacks is one of the players they signed in free agency was Jonathan Jennings, who played with the BC Lions there, and I actually do still like his upside here, but he definitely struggled here as he was taking over for another quarterback that was hurt. Another theme here, as Dominic Davis was still not available as he was still hurt from action there. So Jonathan Jennings, I said, struggled for most of the game. Second quarter, both teams traded field goals here. Lewis Ward actually made a 53-yarder there to make it 9-6, and then that was with 3.5 minutes to go here, so there was no scoring in the second quarter till late. And then Rene Paredes made a short 12-yarder there, as given how tight this game was. Taking the points as we needed. So about a minute and a half to go. Calgary tied the game at 9 here, so like I said, defense on both sides definitely tightened up both times here. And then one thing to highlight here is that Calgary was able to get the running game going here, and although unfortunately Kadeem Curry got carried off the field here in the second quarter there, I have no updates yet on any injuries here, but we just don't need any more injuries here. So now it was 9-9 going into the third quarter here. Calgary scored only 1 field goal, and that was the only point scored in the third quarter here. So Randy Perry's made a 44-yard field goal, so it was 12-9 Calgary going into the fourth quarter there. And then the other thing I'll highlight here is that Calgary dominated in time possession as they had the ball, especially on a 6-minute drive there that led for the field goal there. So then Ottawa, they had the ball with 2 minutes to go in the third quarter and going into the fourth quarter there. Scored the only touchdown of the game here as early in the fourth quarter. Brad Snopoli connected from a Jonathan Jennings pass there. And then with the extra point, Ottawa actually had a 16-12 lead here for much of the fourth quarter here. However, fourth quarter was definitely a defensive struggle there. There were a lot of 2-and-outs here, and eventually Calgary had the ball with about 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter here. It looked like we were driving down to score the winning points here, or try to take a lead here. And one of our receivers I actually like and had some potential upside here. Actually, Richard Sindani, unfortunately, fumbled the ball there right at the Ottawa 1 line just before we got it in the end zone, and Ottawa recovered. However, Ottawa on the next drive there did not get a first down there, so they were faced with a decision here with they had a 16-12 lead here. They were deep in their own end zone for punting here, and this is where you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, because if you decide to punt the ball deep in your end zone, the ball will likely go to around the midfield there and maybe try to take your chance for the end zone there. However, Ottawa had a 4-point lead there, which would have forced Calgary to have to get a touchdown here. However, what Ottawa decided to do here was they conceded a safety, and then they would kick off from their own 20, thinking that Calgary will have a longer field here just to try for a field goal. But Ottawa decided to do was they conceded a safety there, so they made it a 16-4 game, which meant if Calgary was able to march down the field and get a field goal range, a field goal would win the game here, and that's exactly what happened. They conceded a safety there. Calgary returned the kickoff and got to the Ottawa 50-yard line there, so they needed to make about 30 yards to comfortably go for a field goal there, and actually that's what they did. Calgary was able to march it down there and attempted a 31-yard field goal on the last play of the game there. And Rene Paredes, as he's been reliable and clutch when we need it, made the field goal, and the Calgary Stampeders won this game 17-16 here, and Calgary ends July with a 4-2 record here, tied for second in the West, and 3-1 without Bo. I mean, if you would have told me that at the start of the year, that with despite all the turnover that the Stampeders had on defense, and if you were telling me that we would not have Bo Levi Mitchell available in July here, and we'll be 4-2, I'll take it here. So lots of numbers to throw around here because there were a lot of individual performances here. Nick Arbuckle, he actually had his highest yardage game here. He was 30 for 37 here for 370 yards, but no touchdowns. That tells you we were able to move the ball, but fortunately we weren't able to finish here. Kadeem Carey was having a great game until unfortunately he got hurt there. He had 70 yards on 14 carries there. Terry Williams also took over there. He had 47 yards on 15 carries there. And we were able to spread the ball here on a couple of receivers here as Markeith Ambles had 5 catches for 79 yards. Reggie Pingleton 7 catches for 70 yards. And Eric Rogers had 7 catches for 71 yards here. And then on the defensive side of the ball here, Robertson Daniel, he's definitely been making a name for himself this year. He had 9 tackles and 1 interception here. Kroy Greenwood, he had 9 tackles here. Winnie McManus had 8 tackles and a sack. And Deshaun Amos, another rookie that's been making a name for himself, had an interception here. And then, this was definitely all the points were was on the kicker and safety there. Rene Paredes, he was actually 5 for 6, 47 yards being the longest here. On the RedBlacks side of the ball here, well, Jonathan Jennings, he had a good percentage, but he struggled at all. He was 15 for 18. He only put up 125 yards there, had a touchdown and 2 interceptions here. John Crockett actually had a good game on the ground there. He had 18 carries for 84 yards there, and Brad Snopley was the only receiver that stood out. He had 7 catches for 76 yards and a touchdown there. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Corey Tyndall Sr., 8 tackles. Avery Williams also had 8 tackles. And then former Stampeder Michael Klassen, he had 5 tackles and a sack there. And then Lewis Ward, he was 3 for 3, longest field goal, 53 yards, and he's made 61 straight field goals in the regular season dating back to last season here. So it's quite a remarkable streak there. So I'm just going to pull up some quick stats here and the standings here as where we're at, and then we can look ahead to what August has in store for the Calgary Stampeders here. So right now, if you look at the standings here, as I say, Calgary is tied for second in the West with a 4-2 record here. As of this recording, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, they're 5-1, first in the West here, and then you got the Stampeders tied for second with the Edmonton Eskimos, both 4-2 records here. And then the Saskatchewan Roughriders are 2-3, fourth in the West here. And the BC Lions have been disappointing, but Mike Rowley's definitely been sacked the most in quarterback here. They're 1 for 5 there, and Saskatchewan and BC still got to play tonight here. And the one big stat that stands out here, especially in the West here, is that the BC Lions are actually 0-5 against their own division here. So that's definitely going to play big for any tiebreakers here. And then if you look on the Eastern Conference here, well, the Hamilton Tiger Cats, they actually just beat the Saskatchewan, or not Saskatchewan, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers yesterday. So they're also 5-1. However, as of this recording, Jeremiah Mazzoli got hurt last night and had a torn ACL, and they say he's done for the season. So another quarterback that's hurt here. And then in second place in the East, surprisingly, the Montreal Alouettes, they're 3-2 there. I mean, they fired their coach just after preseason, and they actually fired their general manager. So Montreal's 3-2 despite their unorthodox way of doing business here. The Ottawa RedBlacks, they're 2-4, third in the East, and then the Toronto Argonauts are 0-6 and last in the East here. I'm going to revisit my predictions and Grey Cup champion just before Labor Day here, because it looks like I'm going to have to make some adjustments here, but I was only confident in Hamilton finishing first in the East there, and with was only hurt, that might change here. So if you look at the roster here, here's who's on the injured list. So these are guys just on the one-game list. You got Josh Huff, and then you got Lorenzo Jerome, wide receiver and defensive back. Then Michael Kuklas, who's a wide receiver, and then William Longley, running back. Just 4 guys on the one-game list. However, on the 6-game injured list, you got the offensive lineman Brad Erdos. Well, we knew in training camp there that his season was likely done, so he's on there. Don Jackson's on there. Don't know when he'll be back. Haven't heard anything about him practicing here. And then you got Leon Johnson, offensive line. He's been on there since the start of the year. Don't know if he ever comes back. And then Riley Jones, the linebacker, he's on the 6-game. And then Kamar Jordan, he's still on the 6-game list. Haven't heard anything about him coming back, but hopefully maybe we'll get him back in time for Labor Day. And the cliche says if we get him back, that's almost like making a big acquisition, because Kamar Jordan was definitely one of the top receivers last year. As I mentioned, Ivan McLennan, defensive or the linebacker, he's out. And then Eric Mazzurlia, he got hurt in that Toronto game, linebacker. And then Bo Levi Mitchell, well, we haven't heard anything yet. He's been seeing a specialist in Los Angeles there. He's still hurt. And Omar Morris, running back, well, I hear he's actually starting to practice here, but that's better than considering that after he got hurt in the Western Final there, that they were saying he might not play at all this year. So that's progress there. Eza Marabai, defensive lineman, well, he's been hurt since the BC game. He's on the 6th game. And then you got Dwayne Norman, the linebacker there. I think he got hurt in the first game there. And then we have Florent Normandie. He was hurt in the Saskatchewan game in preseason there. And then the last guy, Junior Turner, defensive linebacker, saying he's done for the year. So I think I counted 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 13 guys on the 6-game injured list. And that was on the active roster. Well, this was the roster we submitted going into Ottawa there. So let's just take a quick look at the stats here for the Calgary Stampeders here before we wrap this up for July here. So when it comes to passing, I mean, Nick Arbuckle is 102 for 138, so a pretty good percentage there for 1,284 yards. 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions there, so a 73.9 passing percentage there, and he already has 2 300-yard games and 256.8 yard average there, so that's pretty not bad for a backup quarterback here. And then when it comes to receiving here, or rushing here, I mean, Kadeem Carey is the leading running back. He has 204 yards on 37 attempts for 5.5 yards and 2 touchdowns here. Now when we get to receiving here, our leading receiver is actually Reggie Pingleton. He has 399 yards on 32 receptions here, and then followed by Eric Rogers with 30 catches for 30 carries there for 2. And then Marquise Animals, 313 yards for 26 receptions. And then when it comes to touchdown catches, Eric Rogers has 4 and Jawan Brescison has 3 here. And then when it comes to tackles here, well, Kroy Greenwood definitely leads the way with 43. And then when it comes to sacks here, Cordell Law has 4. And then the interceptions is still 5 for Trey Overson there. So that's just some quick stats here for the Calgary Stampeders. Just go to stampeders.com if you want to see all the receivers here. And then the final part of this video here is let's look ahead here to August here, and strength of schedule is definitely going to come to play here. As Saturday, August the 3rd, this will be week 8. The Calgary Stampeders will be back at home at McMahon Stadium. That'll be a 5 p.m. kickoff. We'll be taking on the Edmonton Eskimos here, first to 3. Now likely decide season series and who might potentially have home field in the playoffs here. And then a quick turnaround on Thursday, August the 8th here, week 9 here. The Calgary Stampeders go off to Manitoba there to take on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers here at IG Field, 6 p.m. kickoff there. So we got the Eskimos, and then we got the Winnipeg Blue Bombers here. Another team that we play 3 times this season here, and those are 2 big tests here. And then the last game we play in August will be on Saturday, August 17th. That'll be week 10 back at home at McMahon Stadium. 5 p.m. kickoff against the Montreal Alouettes here, and after Montreal losing the first 2 games, they've won the last 3 games, so that game definitely could look more interesting here. And then in week 11, they're on a bye here, so after when they play the Montreal Alouettes, that'll be it for them until Labor Day here, and that will also be the week when I go on vacation here, so my plan is I'm likely going to make episode 4 when I recap August, probably just before I go on vacation, so that video is going to come out early there, and if any news happens between the Montreal game and Labor Day game, that will get captured on my September video there. But yeah, that's definitely my Calgary Stampeders. We're looking alright right now in the first third of the season here. We're definitely not as strong as we have been the last couple of years, but we've had a lot of roster turnover here, and we've been doing away with our backup quarterback. And as I said, if you would have told me that with all the roster turnover and not having Bo Levi Mitchell here for the past month here, and we'd be 4-2, I'll take it. So first third is looking all right now for the Calgary Stampeders here, but still think you have a lot to figure out here. But I think the next 6-7 weeks, when you're looking at the strength of the schedule here in the second third here, I think we'll really decide where we are. And who knows, maybe we'll do this roughneck style here. We'll look up and down all season and then turn it on late and do well in the playoffs and win the Grey Cup at home. But I could dream, right? So anyway, if you enjoy everything I do on my YouTube channel, just make sure you like, subscribe here. I also cover all Calgary sports here. I mean, obviously my Flames news, and recently it's been most well received, and I do a couple of personal vlogs here, but I do all Calgary sports, and right now we're in the football season here, and this was my Calgary Stampeders this month, recapping July 2019. Go Stamps go, and I'll see you in the next video.